New information shows that David Reinbacher could be the top defensive prospect of the decade. One of the top hockey statisticians on Twitter posted some shocking statistics that puts Reinbacher ahead of a lot of the top defensive prospects in the NHL today. We'll be diving into that, plus his first game back in Kloten, which really impressed, including a goal, and a bit of a preview for tonight's preseason finale versus the Ottawa Senators, so you want to stick around for all that on this episode of Habs Digest. So let's just dive in. First, we're going to talk a bit about the game tonight, and if you're watching this after the game, feel free to skip ahead to the Reinbacher stuff. Look, you don't need to watch the full video, but hey, maybe this information will be interesting for you if you've already seen the game. But the main thing about tonight, and I'm really excited to see how this turns out, is the Habs lines, and that is Caufield, Suzuki with Raphael Harvey-Pinard. Of course, Harvey-Pinard played a lot with Suzuki on that top line last year, especially after Caufield went out, and they had a good bit of chemistry. Harvey-Pinard, of course, putting up some shocking numbers leading to his extension, and the second line in Newhook, Dach, Slafkovsky. That is also one of the more interesting lines we've seen. We've seen Dach with Slafkovsky a bit. We've seen Newhook with Slafkovsky, but never the three of them together. Of course, we got Matheson with Lindstrom getting the top defensive pairing tonight. I think he actually fits extremely well with Matheson. Good to see that Lindstrom is healthy as well. Same thing with Matheson. Norlinder Barron, Xhekaj, Harris with Montembeault playing the full game. So, yeah, and they're going up against the Ottawa Senators. Just a little bit of look at their lineup. Of course, not their top guys. Some guys that are, still a little bit goony, so some guys that like to drop the mitts. It's kind of what they've done before, but they still have some top-end talent like Matthew Joseph, Josh Bailey, Dominic Kubalik. That's definitely not a first line to mess with. And Igor Sokolov, a guy that we talked about in the video recently. So, yeah, it might be a bit of a rough game, but the Habs are playing some of their better players, while obviously the Sens are missing guys like Matthew Tkachuk and Tim Stützle. However, I think we got to focus on the two top lines for the Montreal Canadiens, as I think that's what's most important. And while, yes, Lindstrom with Matheson is really interesting, we'll keep an eye on it, I'm probably most interested to see Slafkovsky paired with Dach and Newhook, because to me, that is the most interesting line. And if you're watching this after the game, leave a comment about what you saw in the game, because Slafkovsky and Dach look like they fit much better together than when Slafkovsky was playing with Newhook at center with Anderson on the other wing, as those two kind of left Slafkovsky a bit in the dust, for lack of a better term. I mean, Slav is fast for sure, but maybe not at that pace of play. But when he played a bit with Dach before, we kind of saw him get to his spots a bit better. We saw him score his first goal of the preseason, right? So they definitely fit like a glove together, and to see Newhook on the other wing I think is really cool, because it gives a very interesting dynamic to the line. It gives Newhook, a guy who is really speedy, a guy that loves to break out of the defensive zone into the offense transition game quite well, and Kirby Dach, who loves to set up his two wingers. Newhook is no slouch either. I mean, he didn't look out of place winging a line with Caufield and Suzuki, where he had a couple of amazing scoring chances. So I think another good playmaker like Kirby Dach with him fits well. And Slafkovsky on the other wing, it gives you that kind of mix of size and speed, right? I mean, while Slafkovsky is still fast, he has that size and speed and a hard shot. Newhook is more like of a creator, a crafty kind of player, while Kirby Dach kind of just does everything. And I think that line, in theory, works really well together. And the fact that they're putting Newhook back on the wing for a few of these preseason games is also interesting. I know we know Dvorak's going to be out for a while, but to me that points to the fact that maybe we'll just run Monahan as a third center, and maybe we won't have Monahan and Dach on the same line. Maybe we run Suzuki first line center, Dach second line, and maybe Monahan third line with Newhook playing more of a wing role. But we also don't know what the top line is. And as of now, of course, we have Harvey-Pinard with Suzuki and Caufield, but in the pregame interview, Marty St. Louis was asked, like, oh, are you putting Harvey-Pinard there because you haven't figured out a solution to the first line yet, and you don't know what you're going to do? And he said, well, no. And they're like, well, you're just testing him to see how it looks? He's like, yes. So, it could be a first line when the season starts. I think what I got from that interview is that Marty kind of has his mind made up about what he probably wants the first line to look like. And my guess is that revolves around, I was going to say Kirby Dach, but I don't know. They've kind of wanted to play him at center. So actually, I don't even know. What do you guys think? Who's going to play first line wing on opening night against the Leafs? Comment down below. But the fact that we're seeing Harvey-Pinard, the fact that he's even getting this shot is kind of crazy, right? Like, I know he played first line last year, and I know there's a bunch of guys not playing tonight, but at the same time, like, the fact that he's even getting a look up there. I know Heineman got one earlier in the preseason, but Harvey-Pinard showed chemistry with Suzuki in the past. I don't think it's that insane to say that could be a first line we see this season. If he shows that he works well with those two, because Harvey-Pinard provides something that the other two don't necessarily, and that's that excessive offensive pressure, while Suzuki and and Caufield, or well, sorry, offensive zone pressure when the other team has the puck. Like Harvey Pinard is a pest. He likes to get on people, force turnovers all the time. And while Suzuki does that for sure, maybe not so much Caufield's game. Having that dynamic of that guy who's always scrapping in the corners to break the puck free, to force turnovers when the other team has it in their own defensive zone, I think that fits really well with Suzuki and Caufield. So hey, we'll just have to wait and see, but I'm very, very excited to see how this team looks in the preseason finale. Last preseason game before the regular season. It's very exciting. But if you skipped ahead to here, this is the interesting part of the video. Welcome to anyone who skipped. And if you didn't skip, thank you very much for watching up to this point in the video. But yeah, this is just shocking, right? David Reinbacher, this stuff is crazy. I mean, we're actually going to open this segment by showing you his goal. So he scored a goal in his first game back at EHC Cloton. Now, it's an empty netter. However, it was a great empty netter. We talked about it in the video yesterday. Look at this. From his own defensive zone, tosses it up and over every defenseman. They jump for the puck and they can't get it as it goes straight into the back of the net. Look at it from this angle. It's like they're trying to make a leap and catch at the wall in baseball. Doesn't work. Perfectly placed shot. Takes a lot of skill to do that. So awesome to see him score in his first game back. Looked extremely good. There's some highlights out there, people discussing his game. He just looked extremely solid. Got a ton of penalty kill time. Not power play 1, power play 2, but hey, still very interesting. But we got to break into these stats here. And Chance McCallum, we've used his stuff before on this channel. Shout out to CM Hockey 66 on Twitter or X. Go follow him because he is, or Chase McCallum, sorry, I said Chance, I meant Chase. He is phenomenal. So, but he said David Reinbacher seems very underrated, which is kind of crazy for a 5th overall pick. But of course, he's been getting a lot of hate from a lot of people. It's unfortunate, but it's the way it is. He had the highest scoring draft year of any defender this decade, and he did it against the toughest competition of any defensive prospect so far. Right now, he has a plausible claim to be the best draft year statistical profile of any defender in the 2020s. So let's take a look. Here's the highest scoring defensive prospects of the 2020s, minimum 20 games played, and this is just in their draft year. But you can see in their draft year, he's ahead of guys like David Juraj, Simon Nemec, former 2nd overall pick. Juraj's one of the top defensive prospects in the NHL. You see Owen Power there. You see our boy Lane Hudson here. There's so many guys on this list who are very, very... Brant Clark. There's a lot of NHL guys who are projected to be very, very good defensemen at the NHL level, and David Reinbacher tops all of them for scoring. And even though that was ranked by NHLE, which is kind of a scoring comparison depending on the difficulty of the league you play in, David Reinbacher is not known for his scoring prowess. Like, we often cite the fact that he had more points at the same age in the same league as Roman Josi, but you know, even though he puts up decent points, that's not what his main thing is. And as Chase says in a follow-up tweet, like, the things that David Reinbacher does well, a lot of the reasons he got drafted, it's not necessarily his scoring. Well, that's a great attribute. He has solid size. He's bulking up constantly. He gained, what, like 15 pounds this summer, right? And his skating is very fluid. His decision-making is excellent on the offensive and defensive end, and he's very, very calm under pressure. He's great in the transition game. All these things that you want your defenseman to do, plus he can penalty kill, and he can be a quarterback of your power play if you want him to be. And all those things are not scoring, and they won't show up on this graphic. At the same time, though, in their draft year, he tops everyone else. But not only that, he also... Oh, wait, is that high scoring? Yeah, I meant this one, sorry. Which defensive prospects have played in the most difficult leagues? Also, take a look at the little legend on the right. I kind of like it. Is it David? It is David. It is not David. Wrong David. We're not talking about David Juraj. We're talking about David Reinbacher. The most difficult league. Like, this is scored, you know, based on the year of the league, all kinds of different things, but it's a coefficient saying how difficult the league is that they play in at any given time. Look at that. He's number 1 as well. Data from 2020 to 2023 draft year league difficulty, and it's not even really close, right? Like, he played in a harder league, put up better scoring numbers than any other defensive prospect so far this decade. And, like, you know, I think underrated is a weird term, because I think a 5th overall pick is hard to underrate sometimes, but I think the fact that Xhekaj went after, and someone like Zach Benson, who's looking like he might even be a top-line guy for Buffalo once the season starts, maybe not, but he's doing it in the preseason at least, it makes people think like, oh, David Reinbacher, right? Like, it's all about the forwards drafted after him, but again, his attributes, his skills, the reason you pick him number 1, or well, number 1 of all the defensemen, number 5 in the draft, is not necessarily for his scoring, yet his scoring metrics are still the top of like any defenseman this decade in their draft year. So it's just an element of David Reinbacher that we haven't even really thought about, right? He's over in Switzerland now. He scores a goal in his first game. Empty netter, but still showed a lot of skill. Played a lot of penalty kill. Played heavy minutes. Looked like he wasn't out of place. He had a phenomenal game. Again, at 18 years old. And the comparisons, I mean, we saw to Jeff Petrie in the last video. Like, here's the thing. David Reinbacher is a better scorer than anyone gives him credit for, and that's not even his biggest strength. And I think that is one of the best things you can say about this defenseman, right? He looks to be a very solid penalty killer, power play guy that's going to eat at least 20-25 minutes a game for the Habs in the future. He's just growing every single day. But these stats here, like when I saw them, I was just like, wow. Right? I mean, I know, look, we love David Reinbacher here on the channel. I'm sure a lot of you guys know that. But to see these stats, to see the impact he's been having, to see a lot of statisticians say like, wow, I mean, this Reinbacher guy is pretty phenomenal. I think it should hype you up even more than you already are. I know we're already excited about him, but this should just raise that to another level. But that'll do it for this news episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 10K subscribers. And again, as I always say at the end of the video, if you are at this point in the video and you haven't subscribed, hit the button now. You won't regret it. And if you want to see more about David Reinbacher, click the card on the screen right now, as we talked a bit about Reinbacher in our video yesterday in his comparison to Jeff Petrie. Let me know what you think. I've been Josh Gosse. We'll catch you in the next one.